So in my view, as I was saying, a hybrid should exist between capitalism and socialism. South Africa is a very unique case, and I'm sure, as you know, it is a third world country that has got very many first world traits. So whichever way policies are affected in South Africa, it's taken from a global view, which is cool. We don't have any issues with that. But where the problem persists is that we are following a trend, and we're not adjusting according to our socio-economic issues in South Africa. And that's why there's a benefit from a certain grouping of people that have been benefiting for a long time and continue to benefit. So merging capitalism, socialism, getting to a point where we all agree on what needs to be done. We need to stop leaving the poorest of the poor out of the equation. We cannot continue like this, because the way that the policies have been put in place, and you would have been there when those discussions would have happened over many years. There's certain policies that need to be effected. They haven't been effected for whatever reason. But I think as we stand, those policies not being put in place and being enacted is a big problem. And the issue is going to show, and not that it's going to be in the long term, it's showing already, where people are getting restless. We're many years into a democracy, and the people that should be benefiting the most are not benefiting. If you look at the issues of how economic exclusion has happened to most people that should be included in the economy, and I bear that statement down to the basis, the fundamental of what democracy is. Majority rules, one man or one woman, one vote. That hasn't translated, in my view. What are your views on the electorate? Is the electorate, or are the electorate represented in the current economic standing, within the current freedoms that are being enjoyed by a few in the country? Has that translated? So the man and woman that are in the rural area, the young person that's unemployed, the disadvantaged people that exist in all corners of the country, do those people's votes, which are the biggest voting bloc, that's a fact when it comes to the electric and the electorate, and how the power is dispersed in national government, do those votes translate into the policies that have been taken that are not representative of the people that have voted for them?
Well, I'm happy that you are raising very fundamental issues, and I'm sure, as a father to the son, I must give you some clarity, because if I am now as old as I am, I look forward to you and your generations to take the matters forward. I'm very happy that you do worry about these issues, because these are issues that are going to sit with us for a long time if we are not addressing the issues as they are supposed to be addressed. When I two approaches to how the world should be, how countries should run for the benefit of the poor people, there are clear things. Even if theoretically people talk about capitalism and socialism, I think we've lived these up to this particular point. Fortunately, there are living examples today that the problems of the poor can be resolved. That depends how the governing people, how the countries run their economies, their politics, as well as their systems. If you talk about the electorate, for an example, People are always genuine. They give their votes to whoever they can. But I think there is something that happens in the systems because the ordinary people don't work on the systems. For an example, you could say, I'm running a democratic society, but you tweak, you put screws in certain key areas, whilst in the open, it is democratic, but in real practice, it is not. For an example, people today no longer use papers in order to interfere with votes. They use technology. And technology is not something for the ordinary poor, which happens to be the majority. So when we talk about democracies today, I mean, everybody would say it's a democratic thing when many of them are not. It is the understanding how far do everything benefit the people? How do we use technology, for an example, to ensure that it helps to lift the standard of living of all people, including what we refer to as ordinary people? Let me make an example. One country among many has proved that you could, in fact, lift people if you organize your politics, your economy properly. China is an example. China is a socialist country, right? Now, if you compare the countries today as we stand, China is doing the best of the countries. Those that are known to be leading capitalist countries, etc., etc., China has overtaken them economically. Why? Because China looks not just for the means of the country to satisfy a few, but the means of the country to satisfy everyone. What China has done, it calls it socialism with Chinese elements on it, right? For an example, China has moved from a kind of old socialism, came in because in the capitalist society, there are kind of instruments that are very useful to help empower yourself. Are you empowered in yourself for the greedy and those who want to monopolize everything? Or do you empower yourself with development to empower the society and those who want to do business, not to stop them from doing business? China, for an example, has huge companies that are owned by certain individuals.
Yes.
But you also have the kind of companies that are run by government, right? It's not an impossibility, but also the benefits and whatever comes out of the economy as it grows, you deliberately say this goes to uplift people. China, very few decades ago, had slums, had poor people. If you went to China, there were areas you wondered how people lived here. But China's policies, because it is a policy that is looking after the citizens, every citizen, it was able to, whenever it gets its benefit or the profits or whatever, it deliberately said this chunk will go to uplift people, this area, and turned areas that were poor into the areas that were highly developed. That's what we're talking about. Is the government or whoever looking at that? For an example, if you came to South Africa with the kind of policies that the ANC follows, you should have said, how do you budget? How do you budget for the upliftment of the poor people in the rural areas? So you should have had a very clear budget. By now, would be very far. Now, you have a situation where, for an example, we had to force matters to electrify the rural areas in our country, right?
Yes.
But those who are selling, or at the question of business, who are selling energy, etc., they want to keep it. They want it to be more expensive so that the poor people don't get it. So it is the task of the government to ensure that it happens. It has happened in China. Now, if you talk about, therefore, people voting, people will always vote those who say will solve your problem. But in the majority of cases, you find that the business of the private sector and the business of the government, right? There has been an unequal kind of opportunities. Now, the problem that we have had, that some of us who were part of the struggle, once we were in power, the thinking, the influence began to influence us to become businesses or to go to business. And therefore, instead of implementing the policies of government, as China will do, China does not compromise. It
Yes.
implements the policies that help people. You can't be in the upper area where you take decisions, but you are also having a conflicted kind of thing, because we're also a business person.
Okay.
Cadres are there to implement the thing, and China has done it. China has done it. They have now. They can count how many years there's going to be no starving person in China, but it is exercising the system that is capitalist is exercising the capitalist country. The critical point I was making here. What did China do? I just want to simplify this.
Yes.
China used the SOEs, the state-owned companies or whatever you call it, and made it a point that they are empowered, that whilst other businesses were going on, developing, but there were specific businesses by government which were producing or having the benefit of being able to make profits, and those profits were taken and they were plowed back in the development, part of it plowed to the people, to develop people, to develop new cities, to develop everything. Look at what we are doing in our own SOEs here. Precisely because the monopoly capital in the country is the one that is ruling, that takes decisions, that influences people. They do not want the SOEs to grow. And you find that people who are part of us, they tend to be influenced by those people, or they become themselves part of the big capital. So once they are here to administrate the economy of the country, but they want that to come to themselves, and therefore they would not allow the SOEs to develop. If you develop SOEs, they either want the SOEs to be part of the private companies or whatever. Yes. So as a result, you cannot have the results of turning the poor state of life of our people in the rural areas, because we ourselves, because there is no once ideological commitment, no longer there, but at the same time, you have people who are also having business interests who are supposed to run this on behalf of the people, and it ends up not happening. But you can run these as China has done without killing those who are running their companies, but just allowing this to spread. We have got companies in South Africa that whatever you look at, even if it is a broom, is the name of the company that is big. You go to the mine, same man. It's actually madness, not just you are monopolizing. It's actually wobbling everything.
Yeah. Multifaceted, multi-sectoral. So it's not just a monopoly that exists in one sector, they're multi-sectored.
Exactly. So you have these ones everywhere.
No,
we take the sweeping job to them. So that's a problem we face in this country. The country that is supposed to be rich, the country that has even technology know-how, but we have got people who are there, who therefore influence, among others, the legislation that must regulate how things go. So if you have us running it with no longer any commitment to that effect, but selfish commitment, etc. Even the issue, for an example, in my view, of what you call corruption. But you'll find the very same people being part of the corruption. So you are not in China, you can't be corrupt. Once you are corrupt, an action is taken against you. So what I'm saying, we do have the possibility to correct things. That's why when you were, for an example, we are talking here about radical economic transformation, we are talking about what I'm talking about, among other things. Change the manner of doing things. You have here made so many the kind of regulations and laws to actually tie people hands and legs. You can't move forward. But I think as we did during the struggle and defined what freedom was and came up with the Freedom Charter, we can still do it. I believe, personally. I believe, absolutely.
I completely agree with you, and I've never been more positive than I am now. For one simple reason, it is evident, it's obvious that that has to be done. It's not an argument, it's not an idea, an ideology standpoint. It is where we are in our society today. You look at the way the economy is broken down. You're speaking about multifaceted companies that exist across all sectors. You spoke about the broom analogy. It's saddening, but it's true. For the simple reason that there is not enough. There's a lot to go around. There's a big part. South Africa is a very, very wealthy country. There's a lot of potential that still needs to be unlocked. That's why there's a lot of interest groups that focus their time and energy into South Africa. So the positivity is most definitely there. I believe we're going to do it. Our generation is going to do it, not because we don't have a choice or because we are desperate to do so. We know what we need to do, and we will fulfill that journey. We are grateful for leaders that have existed before us, our elders that have existed, a lot of them that are not with us, some that still are, that unfortunately for them, they have fought and will continue to fight two struggles in one lifetime. The one being the political struggle, and the second one being the economic one that we're currently facing. Because without getting that economic freedom, we're going nowhere. We'll be fooling ourselves. We'll be speaking to each other on ideas when we've had the opportunities to do so. We've been to conferences as a ruling party, as a leading political, as the leader of government, party speaking, where there've been policies that have been put into place that have not been effective for reasons that are clear. They do not want to effect these changes. And it's our duty, and we will. make those changes happen. And it's not coming from a point of being of sounding like we're threatening to do so, sounding like we are government bashing or leadership bashing. That's not what we do. What we are saying is there is a ruling class that exists both in the private sector and in the public sector. There are opportunities to deal with the real issues that have not been taken. There are people that do not want to do it, and it's clear, because a lot of our leadership are ignorant to a lot of things. A lot of our leadership are out of touch with the reality on the ground. It's a very simple thing. You do not need to read about it. We experience it. We've got families that are still experiencing these issues on the ground. When we visit them, we see it. Some of us may have had the privilege of growing out of those circumstances, but we understand it because these are the people that still look to us for assistance, for contribution, to pull them out of the economic rut that they're in. You know, I always use an example. I was once walking through a mall in Mandela Square. A gentleman called me, and I could hear him calling my name. It was at a time where the block was very hot for me. So I turned around, and I unfortunately do not remember this gentleman's name. And hey, Duduzane. So I'm like, okay. So I turn around, and he comes up to me and he says, my chief, how are you? I'm like, no, I'm good. How are you doing? No. He's like, no, everything's okay. You don't know me. I don't know you. But I'd like to say one thing. Keep it up. And this is at a point where there's a lot of negativity around our names. So, you know, I was expecting a confrontational person, because I've had some confrontation. There's been a lot of people that have been very complimentary. But on the lesser side, there's been unsavory discussions. And my view is very simple. Everyone has got a view to put across. As long as we all put these views across respectfully, it's all fine. We may disagree on how the economy needs to be broken down. That's fine. We may disagree on who we root for and who we don't. But there's a way of putting it across. Let's be respectful to each other. So he was very respectful. And the part that got me is what he said to me. He said, I don't know you, you don't know me, but I wish you all the best of luck. And I asked him, what do you mean? What are you talking about? He said, my engagement that I'm having with you now is based on media speculation, from what I read or from what I watch on the news. If you are seen to have close proximity to power, political power via family relations or friendships, economic power due to business dealings and partnerships. He said, if you as a young black South African cannot do what you're doing freely and get to the higher heights, like we all would love to, we would all love to be in a position where we can have those opportunities that you have. So if you can't do it with all these wonderful things that we believe you have going for you that may be favorable to your journey, then who the hell are we sitting in the peripheries where some of us only aspire and dream to transact, to interact at those levels? And I was taken aback, because basically what he was saying is keep pushing, no matter what it is, no matter what they say, keep pushing, because if you do not continue on your journey, for what it means to you, it means a lot to other people. You may not see it, but this is what it means. Because if you can break that glass ceiling, that means there are a lot of us that can continue to do the same. Not just me, but a whole lot of other young business people that have existed in the system. So that being said, I am very positive. I've never been, even with the trials and tribulations that you may have gone through, I might have gone through, and a whole host of other people that have met an untimely end to their business dealings because of association and whatever else it may be. The fight needs to continue. We've got energy in our blood. We know what we need to do. They must not get it twisted. We understand exactly what the issues are and how to get these issues resolved. It's as simple as that. And we're going to do so.
I'm very happy. I'm very happy that you say that. You make me very happy indeed, because at my age, I think at times, will there still be young revolutionaries like us when we were young, we were ready to fight and we fought the fight? The critical point is that we had an organization, unlike many organizations that fought their struggles, etc., which was more forward-looking and clearer, like the African National Congress. But it is true, I have observed this as part of it, that once we got into what we called freedom, when the circumstances changed, when we're no longer united by the national question, when we were all oppressed as Blacks, once we got the opportunities, many of us as Blacks no longer pressed the gear that says forward. We thought we have arrived. And many sat there and began to feel they're part of the, as you call it, the ruling class. And the oppressed. At times I say, because I'm born and bred in the rural areas, so I know, I can tell you whether there's been a change that people feel or not. I know what are the problems and I know what to do. But if the system is influenced by people who feel differently, you are in trouble. Because as I say, I've observed this, whether it's economic laws and regulations or social or whatever, those who have the means, unfortunately, they are the ones who influence the direction that people take. And I'm happy that you say to me, you as a young generation, you are ready to move forward. We need that.
There are a lot of, sorry to interrupt. There are a lot of young people out there, young individuals that are fired up, make no mistake, that are fired up and ready to go. Direction is all that people are looking for. There's nothing more than that. Direction and opportunity. An opportunity to showcase and to do the right thing. And when I say young people, that's everybody. Like I said, we move in different circles. The circles that we move. So I'm not just purely speaking, I'm mainly speaking, make no doubt. I'm mainly speaking from the young Black South African's point of view, because I'm a young Black South African. So from that engagement and everyone else that feels wronged by the system and wants to be a part of resolving the issues that exist. But there's people also on the white side of life, on the colored side of life, on the Indian side of life, that see things the way that we see them. Some people don't, but there are a lot of people that see it that say, you know what, we need to work through these issues. Because let me touch upon a point that you made when you're speaking about the Chinese economy and how socialism got them to be a superpower today and a serious play on the global scene. I think the issue that we faced in South Africa, and it's an issue that was skirted past, is the actual Rainbow Nation project of 94 and beyond. The Rainbow Nation project was a great idea. It was it's what we needed, a sort of North Star that we can all look to say, look, that is the direction we're going, and we're all going to move in that direction collectively, regardless of issues, race, religion, gender, and so on. Now, what happened, and this is what's translated to where we are today from my understanding, because I existed at a period pre-94 as a young person and up until this point. So I've seen it with my eyes growing up and how it's affected in me, and I speak from that point of view. There's a massive, massive disconnect between government and the population. And when I say the population, I'm talking about the very same electorate that put the government there, the people that need them the most, the poorest of the poor. There's a lot of misinformation that has been put out there. We've seen it. It's played out in Parliament. You watch Parliament and one week it's one thing, the next week it's another thing. We don't even know what's going on. Is this thing happening? Is it not happening? You know, so misinformation that's put out there. And the third and the most vital bit is mistrust. People don't trust each other. And the issue is we haven't sat down and ironed out our differences. So China, and this is the point that I'm trying to make, China has a collective society that exists within a realm that is relevant to them. South Africa is the exception in the whole world. South Africa has got a very diverse setup. Yes, many other places in the world are diverse, but South Africa has a very diverse setup. I'm building up to a point here. A very diverse setup. You have different races. You have different religions that exist elsewhere in the world. You also have a lot of different tribes, cultural practices and traditional groupings that exist. To pull everyone together, for everyone to be on the same page, has never happened. So if you look at the question of the blacks and the African in particular, as African people, we have our own differences, tribally speaking, that has shown up even in the political party, in the ANC, the ruling party. That's been, there've been obvious cases of that. Racially, we don't see eye to eye because everyone wants to protect what is theirs. There'll be a certain corner that will say, hey, this is ours. We were from here. This is what we want. This is what belongs to us. Others will say, no, actually, we were there first. You took it from us. There's that mistrust that develops. So now, how do we get to a situation where we are all one solid block, like a China, for example, as you mentioned, where we all understand each other. We all understand that there's a demographic that exists, and those demographics affect the way people live, they affect the way people vote, the outcomes, the expectations. You know, I'll get to an interesting clip that I watched. There's a gentleman named Fadil Adams. He's part of a movement in Cape Town called Hatful Cape Townians. And he speaks about the issues in his community, which is the colored community in the Western Cape. I'm just using it as an example, where he speaks about the demographics, and his argument is the colored people in the Western Cape, and I'm sure it would be in other parts of the country as well, were let down by the apartheid government. They felt they were let down by the apartheid government. So they were seen as second grade or whatever it is. A new party comes into power post-94, the ANC. This is what a lot of the people would have said, no, we have hope. There's a government that represents everybody. We're going to get a piece of the action. We're going to be represented within the government. We're going to be represented within the economy as a bloc that exists in South Africa. And the reason I mention the colored folk or the traditional, the tribalism that exists in South Africa is these groups are polarized and they're in completely different platforms. You're not seeing eye to eye. So he says, Mr. Adams says, they're tired of outsiders coming into their communities. From the Eastern Cape, this would be black people, of course, coming into the Western Cape, taking the colored people's jobs in their communities. Civil engineering works, casual jobs, cashiers at supermarkets and stores. And he says, how is this possible? That we have people that are not from our communities, and in essence, and I'm paraphrasing it, people that do not look like us, talk like us, behave like us, and practice our traditional and cultural norms. How can they come in, be a leading part of our communities? And I'm sure you've come across this when you've traveled, you've crisscrossed the country. So the point I'm trying to make, finally, is what China has done is very difficult to do in South Africa, because we have people who are pulling in completely different directions. Unless we sit down and we have the so-called social compact that's revisited, that we visited in '94, but clearly it hasn't been compact enough. If we do not fix that up, point number one, if we do not effect policies that are going to drive us to do what needs to be done across these sectors that give people an opportunity, because we're playing an away game. It's not our home ground. We don't have supporters in the stadium. We're there trying to win a game. The referee is not ours. And we are up against a massive uphill battle. So unless the policies change, and people like saying, yeah, but it's an ANC government, they're just trying to milk the system. No, I'm making it clear. It's not about the ANC government and milking the system. It's about the ANC government leveling the playing field. Unless we level the playing field, there have been many measures that have worked. There's been some measures that haven't worked. Let's just be honest. But the whole idea is during this trial and error to see what works, what hasn't worked. And I think we're clear on what has worked and what hasn't worked. So unless we have this cohesion and policy, I think we're not going to get it done. But I do believe that we're in a position where there are a lot of people that will see things the way I see them. And that's why I'm very positive on moving forward.
I'm happy that you say so, and you can see the things in that way. Societies all over, they are not made of one type of a person. People differ. I've debated these issues in my life when there was apartheid, when I was saying there is a big divide between black and white. But if you removed the blacks and left the whites only, you will realize the divide that is there among the whites. For example, between Africans and English speaking, they are Portuguese speaking, and everybody in South Africa.
Sure.
They're not homogeneous, Jews, etc. Even if you were to sit down and remove all whites and leave blacks only, you will realize that different groupings will emerge. And I've even gone further to say, even if you went to a particular province and said, now we give you the Zulus or Xhosas, between the Zulus will be those who are closer to Swaziland, who speak Swati, or closer to the Cape. Even if you went to the Cape, there will be those who say we are real Xhosas, others are Fengus, or whatever. So I'm saying the issue of different kind of people is not the issue to people who are conscious, to people who understand that we are all people of God, we are all human beings. What, for an example, has helped China? China to succeed. China has emphasized on one important point. Discipline of the country.
Yes, that's a big point.
And I'm saying this not just because I'm speculating. I've discussed this with the Chinese leadership. How have you succeeded to make it? At the end, because Chinese themselves are different Chinas in different regions, people in different parts of the world. They are not that the same. Even if we all call ourselves Zulus, there will be the Zulus from the south, Zulus from the north, in any other way. And I'm saying, what counts is a discipline. We in the ANC succeeded to defeat apartheid because we were united, we had one view, we knew exactly what we wanted to achieve, we were ready to die for it. As soon as we got our freedom, we relaxed on those kind of disciplines, right?
Yes.
And that's a problem. For an example, we've got crime, corruption. Much as we don't like it, we say it, Even those who do it say so. What China did that has made China to be a success story is that it is disciplined. That nation is disciplined. Even if the world criticizes them when they take action, but at the end, they succeeded to unite one huge country with more than 1 billion people. We are not disciplined here. And I was just saying, when we're fighting as the ANC, the reason we succeeded to defeat apathy is because we're united, we had one aim, we're ready to die and fight for. As soon as we got our freedom, we relaxed. We allowed ourselves to move in all directions. We began to interpret even freedom slightly different. Others went to business. They wanted freedom to go to business. Others went to, and we even forgot the soldiers who died, those people who were not sophisticated, but who were ready to die for this country. Now, I'm merely making the point here that as young people who are ready to succeed, we must take some lessons. We need discipline, because the ANC itself could no longer discipline its cadres the way it used to. That's why it began to move backwards in terms of its resolute to solve problems in whatever way. So I'm just saying, China succeeded because the things that I was talking about, if you talk about SOEs, China had a discipline that say SOEs will benefit the poor people. And they worked out rules, laws, everything. Here we said it with the mouth. We couldn't say, you could here have one minister having a view about SOEs, doing his own thing. The whole, firstly, the ANC as a government, the whole country, we just look. That's a part of the lack of discipline. And I'm saying this because for me, my son, it's important as young people, if you want to succeed, there is no army that can succeed without discipline. That's absolutely crucial. And the key understanding, what is that we want to achieve? And how do we enforce discipline? I mean, it's a whole sorts of things that you need an organization, which was like the ANC of the old, that was able to say, we do this or we can't. If you can't do it, pull out. And I'm saying, literally speaking, many of our comrades are actually big business. And therefore, the interest, as the nature will go, is that they must work towards achieving their interest rather than the interest in the interest of the poor. That's a reality. That is why you have people today who boast about how much rich they are. Now, as a caterer of the ANC, you need to say so. You have an ANC that can take decisions in any conference, but not to be in the position to implement. We have no longer that kind of energy and discipline to say, once we do this, we have to do this. That's what we need, and I'll be happy if your young generation that you are talking about changes this, understand this, that if you want to succeed, you have to be disciplined. You have to have a purpose. You have to look at the laws. What are the laws that we are making which deal with the economy? What are the laws that we are making that deal with social situation? How do we deal with all of this? How do you make a nation to be a working nation? China, there's no China that is lazy. China work, everybody else. How do we bring or inculcate to our population the culture of work, the purpose, to be able to go forward? How do you, because we theorize, how do you pass resolutions and you have got no method of following them, that they are being implemented? Somebody can twist them around and you are helpless. You can't help. So I'm saying, I hope as an old man, that the instrument, because the part of the instrument will be political grouping, right? Political party.
Yes.
Is the political party strong? Does it have principles? Does it follow them? And how this is done, that will be very important for us to do. We've got all the good policies, but we don't have a system that implements all of that to the latter. And that's why we get into problems. That's why one man, if one man is a tricky person, can trick all of us, can change SOEs into private companies, and tomorrow we've got nothing as a country.
Who are you talking about? Tell us who you're talking about. Who are you talking about?
No, not about a person. I'm just talking about.
No, I know.
In our country. Absolutely.
No, I take your point. It's a very, very strong point that you've made. And one thing I can tell you, we are not at a point where we haven't started. We have started. The train is moving. Let me be clear. The train is moving. We are going to that promised land. We are going to effect change. We're going to implement policy. Sooner rather than later, we're going to do so. There are young people that are fired up, ready to go. There are elderly that are still fired up and ready to go.
Like me, I'm fired up.
We can't do. We live in a world where we need guidance from elders who've done it before. Your generation, there's generations now, a few generations before you that have done it. Some may not be with us, some are. We take guidance from the elderly to not make certain mistakes that may have happened. A question that I'd like to ask you, since we're on that trend, is there's ANC leadership who have got positions in national government, who are very mature on the elderly side. I'm not trying to say any ageist terms, but who are elderly in life, who have come through, including yourself, come through from an era of freedom fighting into an era of freedom. Do you feel that a lot of, or do you think, or what are your views on a lot of the leadership that may have come from a period in apartheid into the period of freedom? Do you think a lot of the leadership of them brought a lot of baggage with them, and that's why we have some of these issues of non-implementing, of diverting policies, of forgetting about the class struggle and focusing on just purely business? Do you think people lost their way somewhere in between? What are your views on it? Just bear in mind that some people have been fortunate to see a lot of the comrades we might speak about that may have deviated for whatever reason. Good or bad, it's their choice. They're allowed to make decisions that they need to. I look back and there's a lot of elderly people that grew me up. To use a few examples, in Maputo, Mozambique, where I was born, in exile, they are people that I clearly remember from my much younger days then, just like in Zimbabwe and in Zambia, that have existed in the current political system and in the current economic system. As a matter of fact, even in the current judicial system, that were very close to you. Well, at least that's the way it looked like to me, because these are people that looked after us. They protected us. They even babysat some of us. To mention a few names, the likes of Uncle Matthew's Posa in Maputo. I remember him very clearly from there. The likes of Uncle Albie Sachs, who's a a very senior judge in the judiciary setup. You look at Uncle Rob Davies, who was a minister for a long time. These are people that I remember from a time in history that was pre-apartheid, and you guys were doing whatever you needed to do to liberate the country. I even, just as a story, just for people that may not know, there was a time that, because Uncle Albie Sachs lived a few buildings away from us in Maputo, and as we all know, he lost his arm due to a car bomb, which was part of him being in the front line of the struggle. The day he lost his arm, we were sitting in our flat, and we actually heard the explosion. We ran downstairs, and we couldn't get close enough because obviously it had become a crime scene. But it was days before that when I'd last seen him, and I haven't seen him since. But these are people that we remember. These are people that would have come through the system with yourself. Now, the question I want to ask, a pointed question, is there are people that you grew up with, that you served with in Mkonto Wesizwe, in the good old struggle days, as they're known as. And fast forward, you all form a government, and now you're sitting in positions of power at various levels, politically and economically. A lot will feel that you may have let them down, you may have disappointed them for whatever reason. You may have stabbed them in the back, and I'm sure you feel a lot of your comrades would have let you down, that would have disappointed you, or that you would feel have stabbed you in your back.
Well, in revolutions, that's what happens, particularly revolutions which are based on our struggle, national liberation, because the kind of people that you find there might not have in the what you would call fine print, the same kind of things that you have. But insofar as liberation of the nation, everybody wants to be free. I think that's it's natural that as we reach our freedom, then there will be people who say, we've arrived, I've got no problem now. But there are those who say, look, we still have a journey to go. I can't say we've let each one down therefore, because this is like natural things that will happen. People will change views. Who would have known that in the ANC you could have a bulk of people coming out calling themselves that they were Congress of the People, from the ANC who have been with you. Those who remained in the ANC, others came back again. Now, life changes, so you can't say, look, they let me down. Because they decided that now there's a space, there's what we call freedom. We have our choices to make. Others chose to become real business people. Others chose to leave politics, etc. I don't think we could say, let me down. Maybe few people who could have done so, because we took, in other words, our understanding and the world before us must have given us different choices.
Yes.
Who knows? But I think many have worked. But some might have worked. You talk about Comrade Albie Sachs, for an example. Albie Sachs is a lawyer. Once we got here, all of us, we participated in the negotiations. He became the judge. He sat at the top area of the Constitutional Court judge. Now, these are areas we could utilize to move the direction we wanted to move. How was our understanding? Now, I think it would be probably petty to say, look, so and so did this to me, not at all. I think we are all moving in the same direction, but the reality is that as we move, whether we're in government, whether we're outside of government, are we pushing the same direction? Participating in different directions, in different angles, even at times in looking at what others do, saying, not doing it correctly or whatever.
Yes.
So I don't think I can blame them. But it is true, equally, that indeed the way we've done things, we did not keep the same discipline in whatever we do, that the ANC entrenched in us, as it were, because we were now at a different situation. It was no longer the struggle to liberate ourselves, to destroy racism. It was now the struggle to build the country, to govern the country. And how is that done? And I think that's where many things have come. That's where cadres have taken different kind of angles in what they do. So it will not be easy to make that kind of judgment. I think we still are comrades. But something told me when I saw at one point, when people were influenced to work against me, I saw some of the people I worked with, some of the people you mentioned, wherein they began to look at me differently. And I felt I have not changed. I still said our struggle is to ensure that we indeed change South Africa. But some of the people who were with me at the other point, where I said, well, the issue needs time to answer properly, because when, for an example, some individuals who are my comrades felt I should be made to leave the position of running the country before time, they all seem to be in trance, not knowing what to do. These are comrades who would have, at the right point in time, what has he done? But nobody asked the question. I asked the question myself, what have I done? And there was no answer. So I'm saying, much as that is the case, it comes back to what we've been discussing, that the changes, the kind of free political freedom we have, etc., it shifted us from where we have been before, as united by the ANC during the struggle. Once we were free, we had to work in different ways, make choices at times as part of the continuation of what we're doing. So it's a broader
Okay.
issue. I don't think we felt they've let me down.